I'm going to be working the knotted purl stitch, and you can either work it from right to left or from bottom to top. Either way will work. So to start, oh, wait a minute. Before we start, we're going to be working it between two basically parallel lines. Although you can alter the width as you go. You can draw the lines or they can be imaginary, it doesn't matter. To start, and this is the only time when you're going to come up in the middle, we're going to come up between the two lines. And then we're going to move, if we're working from right to the left, just a little tiny bit. We're going to go down on the line on the top and come up on the line on the bottom. If I was working from bottom to top, I would just be coming up a little bit above there and taking my stitch from right to left all the way across. And I'm going to pull my thread through. So I get a little half stitch there. Then I'm going to take my needle, either from bottom to top or right to left. I'm going to work right to left. If you want to work bottom to top, just realize you need to turn clockwise 90 degrees. So I'm going to bring my needle from right to left under that little stitch that I made and pull through. Now I am going to go through that little stitch again, and this time I want to make sure my thread is under the tip of my needle and pull through, and it makes a little knot in there. I'm going to spread these out so that you can see a little bit better, but realize they can be worked close together as well. So I'm going to move to the left. I'm going to take another stitch through from the top and down to the bottom. And when I do that, I get a little diagonal stitch right there. I'm going to take my needle through that little stitch from right to left. I'm not catching my thread. I don't need to worry. I don't want it under my needle even. Okay. But now I'm going to go through that same stitch again, but this time I do want my thread to be under the tip of my needle and pull through. So it's making little knots right down here, kind of like a spine. Again, top to bottom. I don't want to catch my thread, so just pull through. And I made that little sort of diagonal stitch there. I'm coming through it from right to left. Pull through, and then I'm going to go through that little diagonal stitch again, right to left, and this time I want my thread under my needle, the tip of my needle. I'm going to do that a few more times, so I'm going to take a stitch, so I'm just traveling from one side to the other, and it's putting that little diagonal stitch in there. I'm going to slide my needle under that stitch from right to left, and I'm going to do that again under the same stitch, and this time my thread is under the tip of my needle so that I get a knot. Okay, so if I was working from bottom to top, it's the same thing. I'm just moving up on my column, taking a stitch from right to left. There's my little diagonal stitch, so now I'm coming up from bottom to top, pulling through, and then bottom to top again, and this time I want my thread under my needle and pull through. And again, and once you get a rhythm going, this is kind of a fun stitch to stitch. Under that same little diagonal stitch again. Second time my thread's under my needle. The first time I'm not catching it under my needle. Going from right to left if I'm working from bottom up. Slide my needle up from bottom, top underneath that thread. Don't want my thread under there this time. And then under the same stitch again. This second time my thread is under the needle. So I'm going to just keep working however long I want it. Like I mentioned, I can adjust. So if I wanted to start making it narrower, I would just move in. It's just making those under that diagonal stitch, and I don't want to catch that, so there. And the second time I go under that stitch, that's when I want to have my thread under my needle. and tie off my little knot. So I can change my width as I work down here. I can change how close it's together. When I'm finished, I'm just going to take the needle to the back at the center after finishing a knot. So, real quick, this stem is worked with this stitch, and you can see that I worked it very close together, and I started out with it wider down on the bottom and got a little bit narrower as I moved up the stem.